Okay, Mike Masato, CEO of Staff Driven Dental and the Dental Road Warrior, returning for episode 63 in the series. So it's finally come to this. I've been, by popular demand, I've been coerced and demanded and imposed upon to make sure that I discuss my ultimate valued patient letter in more detail, mainly in terms of how to implement something like this, to get patients to comply, and how to put this in your practice, which is a huge boon to your practice because it puts a ton of control in the practice by training your patients to become better citizens in your practice. The word policy actually comes from a Greek word, politeia, the origin of the word meaning citizenship. So it's kind of strange. How do we get that word? This may or may not be something I talked about in an earlier episode, but the origins of words tell you a lot. So how do we get the word policy out of the word that used to mean citizenship? And it's quite simple if you connect the dots. Is that how do you make, why are people good citizens in society? Because they follow the policies, they follow the rules. So if you don't have rules instituted in your practice for your patients to follow, I don't mean verbal rules, because no one follows verbal rules. You know how that works. In one ear and out the other, or it changes into something else they turn it into, or verbal rules with your team. That doesn't work. All right, it doesn't work to have passive rules where you have plaques on the wall that say different things or different signage. People don't make agreements with signs, so that doesn't work either. You need to make explicit agreements with patients in writing, which they agree to, and you manage them by those agreements. All right, so there's different types of policy. We're talking about patient policy today. And the way I do this is in form of a valued patient letter. So I'm going to break this series probably into a couple of parts, and maybe 3 parts, and maybe 2. This is part 1 of how to put this policy letter in here. Now, obviously, if you're not a client and your doctor watching this or a staff member watching this somewhere, this is one of the benefits of when you become a client, you get this. It's one of the core things that we teach. We've seen a revenue increase 20% in the practice over the first year just from this policy alone being instituted, because it is so powerful in that it puts control in over your patients. And the more control you have, the more money you make. Control equals income. All right. So let's talk about this letter and how it's implemented, because the main thing is it's all how it's done. It's not enough to have a letter that you shove in front of a patient to sign and say, here it is. You do this right now. When patients come in on day 1, this is really where you start it all with new patients, because how that first day goes sets the tone for their life in practice. So if they get in there and they're making stuff up as they go along, and they're calling the shots, and they're walking out of there without paying and without pre-appointing, guess what? They figure this is the way it is. It becomes a habit, and that's the way it goes. Whereas if you have a strong patient policies and you're managing by that, and we're on the ball from day 1 with them, they pretty much straighten out and fly right. And if they give you a hard time about this on day 1, you know right away that we need to straighten them out. To make sure that when if they're going to be a patient in our practice, they understand what it means to be a good citizen, quote unquote, in our practice by following these policies. Okay, so this is where it starts right from the beginning. Now, if you're an existing practice, when you start doing something like this, you have 2 populations of patients. You have the existing patients that have been there for a long time and have us trained just the way they like it. Notice how I worded that. They have us trained the way they like it, and they want things to go down their way. They're harder and more difficult to turn around to new things, because, like I said, they're comfortable in the way things are, and God forbid if you try to change them, they pop a gasket. Like, whoa, what's this all about? It was all working great for me when I was walking out of here without paying, and it was all great for me when I was late and you were still seeing me, and it was all great for me when I didn't call you, when I didn't want to come in, stuff like that. So it's kind of a re-education of the existing patient base. Now this takes a little bit more finesse and training to do this, but it's easily done. It takes about a year or so to get through your entire practice implementing this letter, to get through the existing patient base on a one-on-one basis with everybody. And then we have the new patients coming in, the other population of patients. They're easy because they're a clean slate coming in. They don't know what to expect. They don't know that you just started doing this yesterday and are implementing this all right now. So they're easy to do, and they comply pretty easily. All right. So the idea of a valued patient letter, it goes over patient policies, and it makes them clear and explicit in writing. All right, and it's got a nice intro explaining in the letter. This is a letter, first of all, procedurally, that's never mailed. If you mail this letter, you have mass hysteria, you have mass exodus in the practice, because they have no idea with that explanation where this is coming from if you're mailing it to your existing patient base. And when new patients come in, you do not procedurally stick this in with all the other paperwork they're going to fill out, because as you know, they just do one of these with the pen and sign off on it without reading it. That's what they do. So you need to make it be like a separate thing, which is handed out on a clipboard or digitally, if you're going to do it that way, on an iPad or whatever, to have them sign off on separately, because it calls attention to it. And you're going to present it a certain way. The front desk is the one that presents this. So when a patient comes in for the first time, they walk around from the desk, they greet them, they give them their initial paperwork if they're doing it in the office, and when it's all done, then they come out and go over presenting this letter. And the way you present the letter is, it's great. One last piece of paperwork. This is our valued patient letter. It talks about our patient policies that we have in our practice, that we have all of our patients become aware of right from the beginning. So there's no misunderstandings, and they're clear on how we do things in the practice. Please take a minute to read each of these policies, and there's a spot to initial next to them when you've read them. And then when you're done, I will go over each one of them with you to make sure you are in agreement and you don't have any questions about that. And that's the key point. We want to make sure that they are reading it, and they are, when they're initialing and they're signing off on, they understand what they're agreeing to, because we will be managing by these agreements. All right, we will not be managing them by emotion. We will not be managing them by verbal things, or as we go on the fly arbitrarily from day to day. It'll be by these agreements that they're signing off on. Right, and this is where we get them to agree to the 8 or 9. There's about 8 or 9 top policies that I want every patient in that practice agreeing to. Like, what is a policy on payment, and how money works in our office, and insurance, and how insurance works or does not work in our office, and about the evils of insurance. All right, and it goes all into that, and cancellations and no-shows, and how does that work? And what about lateness? What if you have an upset in the practice? And how do you refer in this practice? And what are the benefits of referring? Okay, things like that. It's all gone over in the letter, and they understand the policies and what the penalties are. Because each of these policies, if you don't have a penalty for them not following it, don't bother implementing it. There's got to be some kind of detriment. Doesn't mean necessarily to be financial. Some of these policies, when you see the letter, have a financial component to it that they have to pay. But a lot of them are just penalties where it may be a loss of their time, or they have to do another appointment, or they're going to have to reschedule, or we can't see them that day, or whatever. Okay, but there is one for each of them, because there has to be some kind of consequence for not following the rules in the practice once they agree to them. Okay, and trust me, if you do this the right way, your patients will agree and they'll go along with it. It's all how it's done. It's all how it's communicated to people. All right, so that and there's always a good why when I get into the second part of this series of how, when you present these policies, this is why we're doing it. And if you give them a good why along with each of these policies, they'll go along with it. If you don't give them a good why, because the mind works on why, they ain't going to go along with it. They're not going to agree. There's going to be an upset with them. Okay? So, and I'll go into the whys and wherefores later on. Okay? So, that's how the letter is presented, and you go over with all of them, make sure there are no objections, and you're going to get 90% compliance. We always tend to build it up in our head that we're going to have pushback from various people and whatever. Really, you don't get as much pushback as you make it up in your mind to be. For the most part, people fall into line, they comply, they go along with it, and just do it. All right, especially for new patients. If you're getting a ton of pushback on your patient policies from someone who's brand new to the practice, that's a red flag right there. And I want this person taken care of right from the get-go, because they're going to be a nightmare later on after the fact. Right? And existing patients, yes, there'll be some times when you present this letter. It's a different presentation when you present the letter. It'll be the doctor, the script being the doctor has a letter he's having all of her patients read today. It goes over some of our patient policies, which we've always had in the practice, and we're reviewing them all with our patients this month to make sure that everybody understands what they are and there's no questions about them, or at the beginning of this year, whenever you want to start this. All right, and we go over them the same kind of way with our existing patients. And the way I worded it, to not single someone out. These are policies this is a letter that we're having all of our patients read. All right, because if we say we want you to read, then automatically, well, what did I do? Why are you singling me out here? I do all these things already. Okay, because the majority of the people that you do go over this with are doing it already. They are following the policies pretty much. All right, and this is for the 10%ers that cause 100% of our problems in practice, and that's why we do it. and to make sure the ones that are, you might be saying, well, all my patients are great, they're fantastic, they're all compliant. Yeah, we want to keep them that way. That's the reason why you do this. So if they are great and they haven't gone off the rails yet, let's keep them on the rails. That's the way to go, not after the fact, right? So that's why you implement this letter, right? So procedurally, this is done as a front desk first line of defense. Now, if she can't, the second line of defense to do this is either through in hygiene, or an assistant can do this as well too when they're in the chair to go over this. But the important thing is we separate it out, we single it out, we go through each one of them, make sure they don't have any questions, and if they do have any objections, we don't get into a battle with them. It's not a war at the front desk. You simply say, look, I understand you may have an objection to this policy. I'll let the doctor know what you said, and he or she will speak with you. Now it's like, the doctor's going to be talking to me privately, because they don't want to have a big upset or disagreement with a person who's going to have their hands in their mouth with a drill in the near future here, okay? And you're the boss, and if you're strong enough and back up your front desk and not throw them under the bus, if we're all on the same page about doing this, because they often know where the weak link is. It ain't at the front, docs, it's in the back. So they know if the patient gets a hold of you, it's all over. All right, so we don't want to be cutting back room deals with everybody. We got to make sure we back up our front desk if we're going to implement this policy letter, and make sure that we got their backs on the whole thing. So if they do have an objection, and the front desk or manager or the front desk person will walk up and say, hey, just want to let you know, doc, before you get started today, I went over the valued patient letter with Joe, and Joe had an issue regarding the financial policy he refused to sign. I told him you'd speak to him about it. And then you walk away and get out of there and let the doctor fold his arms and go, okay, Joe, what's up? I don't understand. And let them give you whatever your rational excuse they're going to give you as to why they shouldn't be, following the policies in your practice. And let them know that these are things that need to be agreed to, and handle whatever objection they may have to going along with the policy. All right? And again, many nuances to this, many variable situations. Like, look, for example, we know from time to time, the certain people that are going to get this policy, they're going to give you pushback because they're breaking the rules already. Right? And we know which ones ahead of time are probably going to give you a problem. Okay? So this is time to just set the record straight and get them on the straight and narrow. And that's why we do it with them, and we present them in this particular way. All right? So that's procedurally how it starts in terms of implementing this letter. Right? This is done on your letterhead. When you start doing this, the letter is put on there's two different types of letters: to my valued new patient and to my valued patient. Okay, and to my valued patients for the existing patient, and to the valued new patient it just says to my valued new patient. They're the same letter, just different header on it and all. All right, and you put this on there, and you have it on clipboards for them to sign, and they can get a copy of it. They can take it home with them. You can encourage that. You do it digitally. You can send it to them as well. But you're going to keep it on record. They signed off on it, and now we will manage them by these agreements. And I've said many times before, the opposite of agree is disagree. And if you don't have agreements with patients, you don't make strong agreements, you're going to have disagreements. So putting in this valued patient letter is a powerful start, to laying down the law, laying down the rules, and taking back control of your practice. All right. So I'm going to listen to this video back to this video later, and figure out what I missed and what needs to be added. And for the second part, for phase 2, once we get into the actual policies and going through with them. But that's part 1 for you to get rolling and work on implementing this letter. And if you want to find out more about this letter, or about what I do and how it all works, feel free to reach out to me at staffdriven.com. All the information is going to be attached to the Facebook page and on YouTube when you see this video. So I hope you enjoyed watching, and I'll be back with part 2 soon.